All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elise Anderson, and I'm the VP of Demand Generation at Nicus. We have a lot of good content packed into today, and I'm happy to introduce Janie Longfellow. Janie is our Chief Product and Chief Technology Officer at Nicus, and she leads our product and engineering teams. She has over 20 years of experience leading software product teams for SaaS businesses. Janie was leading the portfolio and project management organization at Agilent Technologies before she joined Nicus. And prior to that, she was the VP of engineering for iLab Solutions. Without further ado, I will hand it off to Janie. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you so much, Elise, for that lovely introduction. Well, let's get to the main event. And I want to start out by asking the question, why are we talking about AI? Maybe that's a dumb question because it feels like every conversation these days is about AI, especially in technology. But I think it's important to start here because I have to confess, on my leadership team, I'm known as the AI skeptic. And it's actually not because I don't think that AI is a transformative tool. It 100% is. I think we're all seeing the places where AI is having these rapid impacts on businesses, on our kids at school, at home. And so it's not that I'm a skeptic that AI is amazing. It's that I'm not actually that interested in tools. I'm interested in problems. So somebody says, oh, we should be doing something with AI. And I say, well, okay, what's the problem we're trying to solve? We're not using enough AI. Well, that's sort of a self-referential problem, right? So then I say, okay, well, what's the problem that you think you want to solve with AI? And about half the time, the problem that the person gives me doesn't need AI to solve it. Now, that is not to say that there aren't some interesting new problems that we can solve because of AI. But I want to lead with, I'm not interested in AI for AI's sake. I'm interested in solving a real meaningful business problem. And if AI is the right way to do that, then I'm all on board. So let's talk a little bit about the kinds of problems that I spend my days thinking about, and I'm sure some of you spend your days thinking about. So in most companies, technology spend is the number one biggest spend after people, right? So we're spending all this money here, but it is shockingly opaque given how long we've all been doing this. So you hear questions like, well, you said that we were getting more efficient in IT and supporting everyone's stuff, but your budget went up 10 million last year. Were you lying to me then or are you lying to me now? Or you hear people say, well, we need to be spending more on AI. Where are we going to find the money to invest there? Should we just take 10% of everybody's and cut? And then, all the technologists start pulling their hair out. And so I think the challenge is, when I was sitting on the business side, there was sort of a vibe of like, I don't even know what they're doing over there. Who knows how they're spending their money? Who knows where it's going? It's all very mysterious and it's a black box. And so the big kind of picture problem that I'm interested in is how do we crack this nut, right? How do we help the business and technologists work together so that everybody feels like we're spending the money the right way and the business is making the right investments and decisions? But there's some speed bumps which make this hard. So let's talk about some of these problems and then we can talk about kind of how AI can help us with them. So the first one is technologists do not understand finance. I feel like I'm allowed to say this. I am a technologist. I grew up on the technology side. And I think the first time I saw a P&L was like 10 or 15 years into my career, right? People in technology typically get involved with finance and budgeting much, much later in our careers than our partners in marketing or in sales or, even in human resources. We're busy playing with our computers and nobody ever tells us about the dollars, or at least we're not responsible for them. And I remember when I finally did kind of get to the point where I was responsible for my own budget, I was working with finance and the finance guy comes and says, Janie, we need to spend this money by the end of the year. So where can we spend it? And I said, we don't need to spend that money by the end of the year. Like, I don't need it right now. Like, there's no need to spend it if we don't need it. We'll just save it. I think I'll probably need it about Q2 next year. And so we'll just save it for then and that'll be fine. And he was like, no, that's not how this works at all. If you don't spend it, A, you don't get to save it for next year. And B, they'll cut your budget by that amount next year. This seemed like the dumbest thing I'd ever heard. And now that I understand finance a little more and I appreciate kind of how they do their work and how things happen, I understand that. But this was totally backwards to me, right? You ask the average technologist, like, what cost center they're in, they may not know. They may not even know what a cost center is. And if they do know what it is, they probably don't know why that's so important to finance, right? So you have these technologists who need to be making business cases, right? We want them to be saying, there's this new technology we should be investing in, or look, here's how we can get rid of these redundant applications, but they need to make a business case and they don't have the background in many cases to do that effectively in the language of the business. But that's not the only problem. Finance also doesn't understand technology. And to be fair, we techies don't make it easy, right? The business thinks they're buying, an application to help with, documenting contracts or whatever, or they're going to go buy some application or service. And then the techies start talking about Gemini and Lambda and Jitterbit and Kubernetes, and everyone at the table who, is not a nerd just kind of falls asleep on their desk, right? So finance actually is super experienced at helping most parts of the business manage their spend and optimize that, right? They know how to do things like, well, how do we balance contractors, which can, we can sort of ramp them on and off really quickly, but they have a higher cost. But if we're trying to cut, then that's an easy place to cut quickly, or, travel or training, right? There's lots of places they know how to do this, but they don't have the background to apply those same tools in most cases to technology. So the case that I always think about in this is you have a really expensive application, right? That IT has built, and finance comes and says, this is really expensive. Like, can we cut the costs on this? And the techies are like, no, this is what the business asked for. If you want us to cut something, it's not going to work the way the business asked. So if that's what you want, right? And so if the finance person knew more, they could say something like, well, hold on. The storage on this application is much more expensive than the storage on some of the other applications. And then inevitably the techies would say something like, well, the business said the system was critical. And if it's critical, it can't go down. And so we bought tier 1 storage that never ever goes down, even in, in the apocalypse. Well, what the business means by critical and what critical means when you're buying storage, those might be mismatched, right? But finance would have to know how to kind of navigate this to get to the right question. Or again, the techie has to, the technologists have to know enough about the business to kind of read between the lines. And again, we're asking everyone to get out of their area of expertise and have expertise in another area. And right, that's hard, especially when any of the independent areas are complex on their own. And then the third problem, which is maybe my favorite and is not limited to technology spend, it is not necessarily obvious what the data is telling you. You know how there's that old joke about like, you can make statistics say anything you want? I feel like the corollary of that is it can be really hard to understand what's material, like what part of this data actually matters. And it's made 100 times worse if you're not an expert on all the elements of the data you're looking at. And I remember at one point in my career, I was in some training on how to present to executives. And one of the things they taught in this training is your first slide should be your conclusion, like what you want them to do, what the answer is. And then every other slide in the deck, it should have a one-liner that explains what the slide means, especially if there's a chart. Just tell them. And I was thinking like, this is going to be so awkward, right? They're going to think that I think they're an idiot. Like, you can tell by this chart that costs are going up. Like, that's obvious. But what I realized, especially after doing some of these presentations and watching this, is they were exactly right, right? I am doing them a favor by getting to the point, getting to the answer, to the conclusion as quickly as possible, especially because I was an expert on the material and they weren't. And what was obvious to me was not necessarily obvious to them. So I just look at this where we have all of this data and there's more every day, and there's a ton of complexity in it, and there's a ton of linkages, right, between the data, and asking people to know what they're looking for, where they should find it, even if it's in a dashboard. That's a lot more effort than we realize. And it's made worse when the people who built the dashboards are experts who sort of think it's all obvious and self-explanatory. So I know what you're thinking at this point. You're like, when do we get to the AI part? The time is now. So when we started thinking in Nicus about where we could use AI and how this could add value, the first thing we thought about and started looking into was the idea of having kind of an expert partner, right? That I'm a technologist, finance is not my home base. Can this partner help me? I mean, what I really want is like in the Matrix where you're like, I know Kung Fu. I want like, I know finance. And this is not going to get me quite there. But the whole idea, right, that I can ask questions, I can understand the why. We can take this finance data, which maybe is not organized in the way that I'm most familiar with, and help me find things, right? Why is this month's spend so much higher than last month? Right? Sure, that's all in the data, but if I can just sort of have this more human interaction, that's going to be great. And you can see here, this is actually a screenshot from an agent that we built to find redundant applications, right? So you've got Teams and Zoom and what's this we're in? Adobe, and who knows what all these are. Like, should we really be paying for all of them? Are they doing the same thing? How much are they costing? What would happen if we, wanted to collapse those and standardize on something? Not to say you couldn't do this with the data on your own, but having this sort of partner to help you could make it a lot better. So this was pretty cool. It's a super fun demo. I like talking to robots, so it appeals to me. But it got me thinking, this assumes I know what questions to ask. And we just covered the fact that like we're talking about people not in their comfort zone. So I realized that sadly what I need is not the like finance Borg implant. What I actually need is minions. This should not be a surprise to you guys. Like, I'm a huge nerd. Obviously, I want to be an evil super genius with minions, right? But all kidding aside, I want minions out there looking for what's interesting. Oh, there's an anomaly. This month's spend was a lot higher. Oh, look, this application was supposed to be shut down, but there's still money going in there. Did somebody forget to turn off the cloud costs? Oh, look, there's been a big bump in usage, right? In terms of how many people are coming through. Maybe we should be, maybe we should be bumping up the capacity, right? I want to be told what's interesting to look at. And just like my executive friends, put the conclusion at the beginning. Don't make me dig through like, look at these 52 dashboards and spot the thing that's interesting, right? I mean, can you imagine if we had to be like, do I have any email? Oh no, okay. Do I have any email? No, right? Like, just notify me when there's something I should care about. Now, I want the data. I want to be able to prove it to myself and my colleagues and my bosses and say, here's where it is. But start with the conclusion. What's interesting about this? And, what should I do about it? And this is where AI agents come in. Now, I think the community really missed the opportunity to call them minions. I think minions are much cooler than agents, but again, perhaps I am not the sole audience for this. So what Nicus is looking at is if we can proactively communicate the analysis, the recommendations, the outcomes to these various players, right? The technology team, the finance team, the business team. And those would be in the context of those various roles. That allows them to leverage their expertise and get support for their areas that aren't expertise and deliver value up front instead of making them go look for it. Here's what your KPIs are. Here's how they're trending. Here's some anomalies that aren't part of your KPIs, but maybe you should be worried about, right? That's a huge benefit. It's going to save us a ton of time. It's going to point people directly at the data that they need, right? And it allows the people to spend their time actually trying to push through change, make decisions, build consensus around kind of what the impacts of these things are. I mean, I love the idea as a technologist that I would get these notifications of like, oh, here's what's happening. We recommend you do this. Would you like me to draft your business case? I have never met a technologist who's like, ooh, PowerPoint, let's go do it. But if you could give them, they usually know what the right thing to do is, right? That's what makes them experts about it. And similarly, if we can give our business and finance partners ways to feel like they have levers when they engage with the technology team to decide about things, they currently don't know how to say like, well, here's what the trade-offs are of different kinds of storage or different kinds of cloud or the different kinds of AI models I can run against and cost versus benefit, right? They don't, that's not their expertise, but it's not that they wouldn't be able to make those decisions if we could put the right things in front of them. So this is what I'm excited about because I feel like it solves a problem that we couldn't solve. I mean, we could do bits and pieces of, but I feel like AI between kind of the humanization of the interface and this ability to kind of have all these agents running around that are much more autonomous than just straight kind of follow these rules. And when something happens, send a notification. I think it's a really exciting time and has a lot of interesting opportunities. So this is what I see. I would love to hear what you guys see. If there's problems that you've seen that are totally separate from this or adjacent to this, we're really excited about how can we use some of these new tools to kind of do the work we're doing, but even better. So that is what I have to present, but I'm happy to take questions if anybody has any.
Yeah, and there is a Q&A panel down to your lower right if you guys have any questions. But first, we'll start out with we introduced the Nicus Finance AI agent recently at the ServiceNow Knowledge Conference. And I'm sure people are wondering, how do you get started with the Nicus Finance AI agent? So, Janie, would you like to share with us where we are in that journey?
Sure. So we do have this agent that we built. It is not available on the store yet because frankly, for all the reasons I just talked about, I want it to be a little bit meatier before we give it to someone. But I think there are lots of ways to get started with AI with what's available. If you're on ServiceNow, getting access to Now Assist, there are a ton of agents available today, and Nicus will have some coming out later this year. And all of those kind of play nicely together, right? So the sooner you get in there and start playing with it, the more you'll kind of see what the possibilities are.
Absolutely. And in addition, the Nicus Finance AI agent leverages the financial data that is available through our financial management database product, which is called FMDB. We have FMDB available for IT asset management and enterprise architecture workflows on ServiceNow, with more coming later this year. So that would be another great place to start if you're thinking about folding in finance AI agent. You'll need the finance data in your workflows as well. All right. Um, any other questions? We have one last one in the chat. How do I become an early adopter of the finance AI agent with Nicus?
The best way to do that is reach out to marketing@nicus.com. As I mentioned, I am a person who goes looking for problems. And if you have problems and you're interested in being part of working together on that solution, that's how we build the best products, right? I don't want to be up in my ivory tower dreaming of what I think someone might want. I want us to try it with real people. So we love to work with customers and prospects on active products that are coming so that we can really tailor it to what the market needs. And if you reach out to marketing, they will get you hooked up with me and my team and all the right folks to put that partnership together.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Janie. We appreciate your time, and I hope to hear from everybody after the webinar. We'll be sending across the recording and the presentation. Thank you for your time, and have a great day.
Oh, there's one question that came up,
Oh,
Elise. Should
one
we take it?
question. Yes, of course. Uh, okay, so how important is ServiceNow CSM to the Nicus implementation?
So I'm assuming that that's about the CSDM, the Common Services Data Model. And the short answer is as important as you want it to be. Nicus's best practice is to leverage the ServiceNow Common Services Data Model. ServiceNow has done an incredible job of kind of building all of the parts and pieces that you need. And actually, our FMDB financial management database is designed to kind of slot in right next to that. And provide all the level of finance detail to support that. However, we are sensitive to the fact that not all customers are at the same level of maturity with ServiceNow. Often there is stewardship issues of like, no, this is owned by those people and the finance people can't touch it. So all of Nicus's products can be implemented without having implementation in the CSDM if need be. But the intent is Nicus services are your services from the CSDM. Nicus's applications are the business applications from your CSDM. And where you leverage the CSDM, we can actually take advantage of that. That's how we pipe data into enterprise architecture, into asset management because of that connectivity. So whatever level of maturity you have, we can work with that, but you will get the most out of it, like most things in ServiceNow, the more integrated your data model is.
Excellent. Any other remaining questions? All right. Thank you all for your time, and I hope you have a great afternoon.
Thanks all.